Thank you. And as usual, it is indeed a pleasure to be with you again. Now, many of you probably know by now that the month of May has been designated as Mental Health Awareness Month. Now, having said that, let's get started. There was a time when Black Americans were ashamed to admit that they were suffering some type of mental illness and to admit that one was mentally stressed. In most cases, they were deemed to be crazy and dangerous to society. However, now, today, more than ever, Black Americans are joining other races and divulging that they're suffering from a mental illness and they're going to seek professional help. Among young people, there's been a 400% surge in mental illness. Now, having pointed that out, I feel comfortable to reveal my lifelong struggle with mental illness. And maybe my unscientific thoughts will be productive to those with a mental challenge. Let me open with this statement. I sought the understanding and the ear of a person whom I deemed to be a loyal friend and our buddies in college. And when my employer transferred me to New Orleans where he lived, I was so happy. Together we socialized night and day. He became a successful real estate developer. And when he needed me, with the problem, I was glad to be his well-in-wall. So one day I lamented this to him. My friend, have you noticed I'm suffering with some type of mental stress? I don't know what it is, which seems to have started with my last employment. When I was there, I felt as if I were Damocles with a sword hanging above my head by a single thread. Oh, I was always confused. And when you add my personal problems, I don't know what I'm going to do. You see, one day I'm full of sadness and the next full of anxiety. I'm all over the place. I have given thought to seeking professional help, but I don't want that stigma. And he replied, I sense this much, Cass. But listen, maybe you should stop believing that you can save people who do not want to be saved or people who cannot be saved. Then your issue will go away. You'll be just fine. Well, now his lack of concern only elevated my situation. And one day I said this to him. But look, what about this? When ladies state to me that they care about me or they love me, well, I just run away. I don't want to hear it. And something else? I tell myself that I'm not worthy of being loved. After all, my mother did not love me. She said she can't love a failure. Now, listen, I am disappointed when I force them to leave me. And after they're gone, I want them back. Now, that proves I have some mental issues, doesn't it? Oh, Cass, I wouldn't worry about it. You'll be okay sooner or later. Now, taking self-inventory, I'm going to unbosom this thesis to you. A person should be empathetic to those who are downtrodden, those who are disheveled. You see, it will be their way to pay their earthly rent. So with that concept in my conscience, I impregnated myself with a mentoring program, a chapter of the Big Brothers Big Sisters there in New Orleans. And with much blessings, my birth was without complication, a successful birth. On the other hand, though, I would suffer from postpartum depression. Why? Well, I had assumed that underserved masses of people would overwhelmingly become mentors and thus provide guiding lights for disadvantaged youth. However, this was not the case. I would hear something like this. Some children are just born bad seeds. It would be a waste to become involved with them. Their parents don't care much about them, but we'll pray for them. And I would retort with something like this. People said I was born a bad seed, but my parents gave me water, nutrients, fertilizer, and tender love. And I sprouted into a fruitful and productive tree. Would you agree, sir? What did you just say? Now you listen, you come into the house of the Lord stating that people should be ashamed if they're not involved with disadvantaged youth. They're not Christians unless they get involved with something. And you state that God has never answered a single prayer and God will never answer a single prayer because God would be indifferent if he answers some people's prayer. Who says foolish stuff like that? You know what? You hate your own race of people. You're just filthy. A few years thereafter, I impregnated myself once again, and my gift would be named MOMS, M-O-M-S. It would be a pilot program. 30 single mothers living in poverty would have the opportunity to be successful. And like all pregnancies, quality prenatal care is necessary. So I assume city elected officials, along with ministers, would help me with my pregnancy by endorsing my child to come. But they did not. They say your pregnancy is not needed. And I suffered a miscarriage and later postpartum depression. Now at this stage, I was more than certain God hated me and God did not like poor people. Often I would lament this: life, I loathe you for my senseless life. Why couldn't you give me a fair chance to be successful in life? Every day I am so close to committing suicide. You know what life said? Look, loser, I gave you your life. You failed your mama and you failed humanity. Nobody cares if you bail out. Just do it. Often I would think about what my mother cemented into my brain, and she said it maybe 1,000 times. Son, I prayed night and day that you would become a medical doctor, and we would work together as doctor and nurse right here in Idabel, Oklahoma. We would save lives of poor people, most noticeably the Choctaw Native Americans. You see, your dad and I spoil you with lavish gifts, expensive clothes. You went to a private boarding school, so you would be smart, but you're not even smart. We bought you a new car for college. Son, how could you fail your mother? How could you fail humanity? I'm going to request this from you, son. Do not celebrate me on Mother's Day or my birthday or Christmas. Now, because I heard those words, I would struggle all my life with raw guilt. I said, how could you hurt your mother? Why should you become what you want to become instead of doing what your mother wants? Oh, let me tell you this about my mother. My mother's mental illness was born shortly after she returned from college in 1940. She assumed that she would work at the hospital as a nurse, but she was refused. She and the town's only dentist, a black dentist, they organized a chapter of the NAACP because that's where she worked for him. Now, she labored tireless, attempting to encourage people to do more for themselves and for their neighbors. Often she heard something like this, though: Eddie Mae, why don't you let sleeping dogs slide? You see, we have short cotton, and one day, with the good Lord's blessing, we're going to have tall cotton, girl. She was also accused of being a witch devil because of her frequent interruptions of her preacher's daddy's sermons. And she'd say something like this: people, we must do more than offer senseless prayers to abolish our problems. Let's stick together like bark on an oak tree, and we will have clout to improve our lives. We'll demonstrate. And listen, people, we must bury our profound jealousy. It is toxic, and we must register to vote. If we do these things, we'll be better off. Well, her thesis wasn't appreciated. It sent her into a black hole of mental illness, never to get out. Gravity held her down. And you know, she was down in that hole when she passed away at the age of 95, and she told me this: I never have forgiven you. Now, if you are an adult who is battling mental depression, there are numerous avenues to employ which might relieve some of your suffering. Now, keep in mind, what did I say? My thoughts would be unscientific. But you can do this: readjust your goals, become involved in volunteering, try meditation. And when you meditate, you actually pray, and you become closer to God, and it gives you a little more strength. And most importantly, seek professional help. And don't be ashamed to go to the pharmacist if it's prescribed, like I was ashamed to go to the pharmacist and get medicine. Now, if you are a teenager, first start with self-inventory. Don't feel that you have to fulfill a parent's goals. And be cautious with using social media, which can be self-hatred trap. And it leads to suicide. And if you're not receiving as many approvals or likes as someone else, even though you posted the same thing. It's not about you. It's not about your words. It's about popularity. And listen, spend less time on your smartphone. You know, just talk to people face to face. And you should read more. And talk to your school counselor or your parents if you think that you're suffering with a problem. Now, as an octogenarian, and spending most of my life wrangling with mental illness, and finally I was diagnosed as having depression as well as anxiety. I no longer harbor daily thoughts of suicide. You know, I have freed myself from self-imposed imprisonment. Now, I will always be on probation. That means I'll never get rid of it. People don't get rid of their mental illness. They just lessen it. And please understand this, and I really want you to understand this. Sometimes one must suffer before one is able to enjoy life. Know this, we are not broken. We are damaged at certain parts, and we will mend. But we must believe that we can mend. Thank you so much for listening.